Water has a way of keeping secrets. Not everything that falls into the water gets out again. When something gets lost in the deep, that might be the last that anybody sees of it for hundreds of years, sometimes even longer. Underwater discoveries make for great stories though, and we've got some outstanding ones in this video. The best place for a classic car is a safe, dry environment, like a garage. Classic cars have value, especially to collectors. That's what makes this first discovery such an odd one. In June 2022, a fisherman out on Lake Hamilton in Arkansas, USA, spotted something odd on his sonar display. He initially feared he may have spotted human remains, so he informed the police. When the authorities investigated, there were no bones to be found. Instead, they located a classic muscle car. The problem is that they can't say precisely what kind of classic muscle car it is. The tires are very thin, which is a telltale sign that the vehicle is very old. Some experts have speculated that it might be a military vehicle of the 1940s, but it's impossible to say for sure. Other sources say that it could be a 1929 Dodge. Visibility at this depth is only 4 to 6 feet, and the car is likely to be too delicate to be extracted, so we may never be able to identify it. That means the mystery of how it ended up in the water will forever remain unsolved. Way back in 2007, Korean fishermen working off the coast of Daeseom Island hauled a webfoot octopus onto their boat and were shocked to find a celadon bowl from Korea's Goryeo period attached to it. The artifact is more than 1,000 years old and prompted a major marine archaeological project in the area. Since then, 29,000 artifacts have been brought to the surface. Not all of them are valuable, but those that are tend to also come from the Goryeo period and are also celadon wares. Helpfully, the experts have also found wooden tags inscribed with information about the sunken objects. Most of the objects have been recovered from ancient shipwrecks beneath the waves and span a period of around 400 years. The most notable of them is the catchily named toad-shaped inkstone with paste-on-paste design, which is the only toad-shaped celadon inkstone known to have survived to the present day. A pair of prunus vases recovered in 2010 are also considered to be of huge significance. The entire collection was exhibited together for the first time in November 2022. In June 2022, scientists from the University of Western Australia confirmed the discovery of the largest organism in the world, and it's underwater. It's a plant, specifically an ancient seagrass called Posidonia australis, and it's still alive despite being around 4,500 years old. The discovery was made in Shark Bay, which is already designated as a World Heritage Site. Considering that it all came from a single colonizing seedling, the size of the organism is breathtaking. It covers an area of more than 120 square miles. It's so big that the biologists initially refused to believe that it could all be a single organism, but the fact was confirmed when they sampled seagrass shoots taken miles apart, all of which had the same genetic fingerprint. Surviving for as long as it has means that this seagrass must have experienced wildly varying temperatures, changes in the salinity of the water, and extremely high light conditions. Any or all of which would often be stressful or even fatal for organisms of this kind. The secret of its durability is unknown. The Uluburun shipwreck is thought to be 3,300 years old, but nobody knows for sure. It can be found off the southwest coast of Turkey and is said to be one of the oldest shipwrecks in the whole world, not to mention one of the richest. Turkish sponge divers came across the wreck by accident in 1982, sparking a frenzy of marine archaeological activity, which resulted in the retrieval of valuable copper ingots along with ceramic containers full of grapes and figs. The design of the ship suggests that it came from Cyprus, although a Syro-Palestinian origin is also possible. There's so little wood left that carbon dating is impossible, so the estimate of 3,300 years comes from a gold scarab engraved with the name of the Egyptian queen Nefertiti. The lack of a hull means that it's also impossible to work out how or why the ship sank. Given its size and the amount of cargo, though, it's safe to say that this would have been a devastating loss for whoever had paid for it to sail. A November 2022 study concluded that there's so much bronze aboard that it can't all have been destined for one customer, meaning that there may have been a complex trade network in the Mediterranean all that time ago. We're all familiar with the concept of sunken towns and villages thanks to the myth of Atlantis. Understanding the concept and actually seeing one with your own eyes are two very different things, though. Here's a sunken village in Ilsesee Lake in Augsburg, Germany. However, all is not quite as it seems here. Despite looking very convincing in every detail, for example, there's a church down in the water complete with a cross that's tangled with so much seaweed that you'd swear it'd been down there for centuries. The village is artificial. It's 50 feet below the surface of the lake, which was created on purpose a few years ago when a quarry was flooded to create an attraction for divers. All of the structures at the bottom of the lake are specially formulated to encourage the growth of freshwater sponges and algae. Everybody's welcome to come and visit the village, but those who wish to do so have to undertake an ecology course and an advanced diving course before they're allowed into the water. Nobody's allowed to physically touch the bottom of the lake, as doing so could disrupt its delicate ecosystem. In 2020, scientists studying marine life deep underwater, close to the hydrothermal vents of the Eastern Pacific, made a surprising discovery. It's a previously unknown species of scale worms, and they sparkle in the darkness. Because of the way their scales resemble sequins, they've been nicknamed Elvis worms. The correct scientific name for them is Pinna leopoldina. Part of the name translates into English as hungry worms, which is a reference to the location they were first found, feasting on the carcass of a dead whale. It was initially thought that there were several species of the Elvis worms, but further study revealed that they change size and color as they get older. Bizarrely, the Elvis worms regularly indulge in a fighting ritual, which involves bouncing up and down in one spot, fighting each other, and throwing punches at each other. As they have endless food supplies and don't appear to have territorial concerns, the reason they choose to fight each other when there's no obvious advantage to be gained by doing so is unknown. Having said that, you could say the same about crowds of people in city center pubs and bars all over the world. When a plane crashes into the water, it's unlikely to ever come back out again. The seas are full of wrecked planes. However, not every plane in the seas ended up there because of a crash or an accident. As an example, here's an old Lockheed Martin L-1011 TriStar plane on the bottom of the Red Sea. The plane's wings have been shorn, but it's otherwise mostly intact and still has its 3 engines and tail fin. The plane was first registered during the 1980s and served several airlines, including Royal Jordanian, TAP Air in Portugal, and Novair in Sweden, before finishing its career back in Portugal with Lozair, retiring somewhere around 2011. At one stage, it was scheduled to be scrapped, but instead it was brought to the Gulf of Aqaba in Jordan in 2019 and deliberately sunk to become an artificial reef and nurture the growth of marine life. The project is a success. Not only is the plane a big hit with diving tourists, but there are also now huge sponges surrounding the fuselage accompanied by octopuses and pufferfish. The plane's innards have also developed a thick coating of marine life, but are otherwise unharmed. In the year 1570, a group of 40 people, 2 priests, 23 novices, 7 students, and 8 collaborators set sail to Brazil from Portugal. They were Jesuits, and they were on a mission to convert people in the New World to their faith. None of them ever saw home again. The missionaries made a planned stop in the Canary Islands, which, unbeknownst to them, were full of French Huguenot Calvinist pirates. Perhaps, unwisely, the Christians made a show of celebrating their faith by marking the Eucharist at the Hermitage of Our Lady of Sorrows in Tazacorte. In doing so, they attracted the attention of the pirates, who followed them back to their ship and then brutally attacked them. They were beaten and robbed, after which they were tossed into the sea. Witnesses said that some of them appeared to still be alive when they went into the water, but none of them survived. Ever since, the missionaries have been known as the Martyrs of Tazacorte, but it still took more than 400 years for them to receive an appropriate memorial. In 1999, the Council of La Palma created an underwater memorial to the martyrs in the shape of 40 stone crosses sunk into the sea at the approximate site of their martyrdom. They're now known as the Sunken Crosses of Malpeque. The name David Copperfield is mostly linked to magic and showmanship. There are even some people who believe that he's the greatest magician who's ever lived. It turns out that his interests aren't limited to the seemingly supernatural, though. The showman has a keen interest in sculpture, and unusual sculpture at that. If you're lucky enough to be granted permission to get close to his private island in the Bahamas, you might be able to take a closer look at the work of art hiding off the coast. This sculpture is known as the Musician, and it consists of a mermaid staring thoughtfully at a full-sized grand piano. On days when the weather is good and conditions are favorable, the sculpture is clearly visible even though it's 15 feet below the water. During windy or cloudy days, though, it may as well be invisible. Unless that's just Copperfield performing another vanishing act. The entertainer paid artist Jason DeCaires Taylor to complete the work for him and has it in its current location as a surprise for the guests who stay with him on the island when they go snorkeling. This shipwreck is well worth seeing if you ever find yourself at Chuuk Lagoon, an atoll in the central Pacific Ocean. It's the wreck of the Japanese cargo ship Fujikawa Maru, built in 1938 and tasked with shipping cotton and silk between India and South America. The ship was requisitioned by the Japanese Navy in 1940 and served in the Second World War. In February 1944, she was battered by U.S. bombers during Operation Hailstone and sank. She went down with 3 Zero fighter planes and an A-6M fighter still aboard, and has since become one of the most visited wreck diving sites in the world. Today, it's covered by pink and white coral and surrounded by tuna. But many of the objects inside the shattered hull of the vessel are still in one piece. Amazingly, that includes all of the planes. If the A-6M could be raised to the surface, it would be the only one of its kind still in existence. But sadly, that would be impossible without causing significant damage to the rest of the wreck. It's best left where it is. All of us are familiar with the sight of enormous factory chimneys in towns and cities that belch smoke into the sky. But how many of you knew that the same thing also happened as a natural occurrence underwater? The phenomenon is known as a black smoker, and the biggest one ever seen was documented off the coast of Costa Rica in 2007, 8,500 feet below sea level. Positioned on a volcanic ridge, this all-natural mineral chimney emits hot, dark water that looks exactly like thick, dark smoke. In the process, it attracts tropical marine life of a kind that's rarely, if ever, seen anywhere else beneath the waves. That marine life includes pink Statomedusae jellyfish and spiky tube worms that have encased the vent of the chimney and help to explain why this black smoker has been officially named the Medusa Hydrothermal Vent Field. At the mouth of the vent, the temperature of the water is a boiling 635 degrees Fahrenheit. Under normal circumstances, it would boil, but the water pressure this far beneath the sea is so great that it prevents that process from happening. We know that many of the people watching this video will enjoy a beer or two and might even have a taste for rare and unique beers. But how far would you go to indulge that taste? Would you, for example, go as far as the team of scientists in Canada who found a 125-year-old beer at the bottom of Halifax Harbor last year and then opened it in January this year to taste it? The bottle of India Pale Ale was brewed at Alexander Keith's Nova Scotia Brewery, a company that still trades today and is theoretically still fine to drink because the cork was still secure and watertight. These scientists decided to sample it in the name of research, and reviews were decidedly mixed. Some described it as acidic and bitter with hints of cherry and oak, whereas others said it was disgusting with a strangely meaty taste. But while none of the research team got sick from drinking the beer, they all agree that if you find a century-old bottle of beer at the bottom of a lake, stream, or harbor near you, it's probably not a great idea to drink it.